But when we say, this is very interesting. Do you ever watch a show called Behind the Music on VH1? Well, you have got to watch it. Because what it always is, it's video documentaries on famous rock musicians. And it always goes like this. Just when Michelle Phillips and Mamas and the Papas had scored their biggest hit ever with Monday Monday, troubles were around the corner. Just when Journey had had their second tour and had sung in front of 25 million American people, little did they know that tragedy would hit in Kansas. So the whole thing, it always takes you to the moment of great éclat, you know, and then it pulls you down. Because life is like that. Well, they interviewed Steve Perry, the greatest set of lungs in the history of rock and roll. The greatest set of lungs. And they said, Steve, they interviewed him, tell me about what did you really think about your role in Journey? And this is what Steve Perry said. Well, he said, you know, the funny thing was, for the 10 years of our greatest national and worldwide success, I felt like I wasn't even part of the group. Now, right after that, the editors of VH1 put in a little soundbite from a guy named Neil Schoen, who's the guitarist for Journey, and they said, Neil, Steve Perry tells us that he doesn't feel that he was ever really part of Journey. And Neil Schoen says, wasn't part of Journey, he was Journey. Now, what does that teach you? That teaches you that even the biggest insider in the history of stadium rock and roll, the biggest thing since John Lennon and Paul McCartney, doesn't think he had a role in it at all. That tells you that Jesus was right. I didn't call righteous, I call sinners. But come to find out, people of means respond to me. People who are homeless respond to me and live under bridges. But also admirals respond to me. Ben-Hur responds to me. And Mary Magdalene responds to me. And the Duchess de Sévigné, 17th century aristocratic people in France respond to this message, as well as their servants, because everybody feels they're an outsider. Why? Because real identity does not come from law. If that were true, Steve Perry would be in heaven now. Of course, he will be, but nonetheless, you know, a lovely Catholic boy. But from San Francisco, now, the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. Why? And I'm just about to wind this up. For there is no distinction. Now, can you believe what a thing that was to say in the year 39, 42, 46 AD? There's no distinction. There's no distinction between so-called people, high-wealth individuals, these are cliches that you hear all the time, and people who have nothing. People who went to public school and people who were fortunate enough to go to private school. Because all of those people, if you woke them up in the middle of the night, would realize that righteousness of God, an identity, security, and a non-anxious life does not have anything to do with performance. I know this to be true from experience. And I believe Paul to be right, which is a better way of saying it. And then he says the obvious answer is, there's no distinction, verse 23, since all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Do you see why this is good news? We think it's bad news, you know, sinned, all have sinned. It is powerfully good news. It means that Michelle Obama and I are basically deep down the same people. I'm just using that. I don't know how that example came into my head. And I'm sure she would be very, very questionable about that. But let's just use that as an example. Or Sarah Palin and I have deep down, we are very similar, deep down. And it has to be true if this is true, because he says, all have fallen short of the glory of God, from Tina Fey to Steve Perry, from the speaker to you. And what is the brilliance of that? The brilliance of that is two, and I'll finalize. First, it means that you don't have to do anything again as long as you live. That whatever you do will be a response to love, not an attempt to get love. Anything you do will be a response to love. And by the way, you can do a great deal. People who are responding to love are very creative. They actually write books. They go back to school. They become ballet dancers. They follow their voices. They even, to use a defaced voice, they follow their bliss. You know, I like Joseph Campbell too. Hey, it was all right. That was then, this is now. They follow their bliss. They follow their bliss. People who are not working under law. You know, I said this last week and someone came up to me and said, Paul, that is so right. I said, the people that get tenure in academic institutions are always the people who don't want tenure, who aren't craving it. You just spend any time from George Mason University to Haverford College to Hamilton College to Princeton. You will find that the people that want tenure and are working their lives out to get tenure are not the ones who get tenure. The people who get tenure are the people for whom the ideas alone are of interest. And then they get tenure everywhere. You hate these people because they're disattached. The only exception is Episcopal bishops. But those people, generally speaking, if they really want it, they'll get it. Now, that's a fact. There is no, on all fronts. But this, you see, what this means is that and so as a result, there's no distinction between me and Michelle Obama, or me and Steve Perry, or Mary and me in our marriage. Ultimately, we're similar. She's from Venus, I'm from Mars. You know, all that may be so. But deep down, he says, there is no distinction, because whatever givens that I have are relatively superficial, and vice versa, because we all fall short equally of the glory of God. So you can see why, on the one hand, this puts to bed all tension about success in any way, and also it allows you to relate to other people. This is why the movie Not Easily Broken, the new African-American / for everybody movie, it's about everybody. It's about single mothers, and it's about white single mothers, and it's about little boys who have accidents, and it's about guys who've served time in prison, and it's about controlling older mothers, and it's about brides trying to get out from under the controlling mother who's always judging the husband, and it's about husbands who don't make as much money as wives, and it's about husbands who lose their jobs and are sloppy but are dear, and it's also about prospective husbands who appear to be dear but are not. It's about everybody, and finally, as the movie says, the only answer to all the differences of the world is God's love, and he says it in words in the movie, and boy, there's not a dry eye in the place. So, we're going to take questions now for about 8 minutes, and what I'm going to do is ask you, and I'll repeat the question, and then David, our photographer, after I leave, very, very quickly, is going to want you all to stay in place so he can film the person asking the question. And if you don't want to be filmed, that's okay too. Okay, questions. But don't worry, you're not on tape unless you wish to be. And I'll repeat this. Questions or comments about this question of identity and grace and law, which I will continue now for several weeks. You see, we just did 2 verses.